Like, how do we reset in the middle of the year? Do you feel like you can come back from, having guidelines instead of rules, and then halfway through the year establish those rules and rework those expectations? Is that possible, or should we just try and stick it out for a year?
No, it's absolutely possible. You can just walk in one day and say, I'm unhappy with how things are going, and here's what we're going to do about it. And then you introduce your rules, you teach those rules, you teach students what they mean, you define them for your students. You make sure they understand through modeling and practice. You can even give a quiz so they know up front, this is how it is, this is how it's going to be.
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. Welcome to episode 11 of the Music Ed Mentor Podcast. I am your host, Elisa Jones. You can follow my music education blog at professionalmusiceducator.com or find me on Facebook at Professional Music Educator with Elisa Jones. As I've developed this podcast, I've tried to keep off the podium, so to speak, since there are several other podcasts that help you with curriculum and rehearsal techniques and even how to teach specific songs. So I've always tried to focus on things to help you outside of the classroom to improve your life. But today I kind of break from that tradition because if we really want to talk about improving your life as a music educator, we have to talk about classroom management. I mean, let's admit it, as music educators, we tend to have a few more challenges facing us than the typical school teacher. We have intentional movement, lots of equipment, and noise, and noise, and noise. So what can we do to combat the nature of our assignment and the natural tendencies of our students? How can we have better transitions between activities? Should we or should we not offer rewards? Is there a routine we can go through before the class even comes in that sets us up for success? What should our class rules look like? How can we regain the rapport we've lost after we've lost our temper? To help answer these questions, I bring on the noted expert on classroom management, Michael Linsin. Perhaps you've heard of, picked up, or read his book, Classroom Management for Art, Music, and PE Teachers. I highly recommend it. Or maybe you're one of the more than 100,000 educators subscribed to his weekly emails. Either way, it is with great humility that I bring Michael on to share with us a few of his secrets for superior classroom management. But first, let me share with you one of my favorite resources you may have not discovered yet, and that is the Smart Music YouTube channel. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by Smart Music. We couldn't make it happen without them. So next time you open your browser, check out their masterclass with Bob Phillips, all about getting your kids to practice and turbocharging their results. I'll even have the link for you in the show notes to make it nice and easy to find. It's great information you don't want to miss. With that, let's get on with Michael Linsin.
Oh, okay. My name is Michael Linsin, and I am I hate to call myself a classroom management expert, but I've written 4 books on classroom management, and I have a website called Smart Classroom Management where I help teachers improve not just behavior in their classroom, but also improve student academics, the academic side. So how to motivate students and get the most out of them, and also to really love your job. So that's a big focus, to love teaching.
Yeah, I don't think we can overestimate that enough, that so many teachers get into teaching and they don't know how to adapt in some way or another, and they end up just hating the job. I feel like we see that on social media every day. Don't you feel?
Yeah, for sure. And then the culture of education and teaching too, there's this underlying martyrdom that somehow we go into teaching and we have to be miserable and stressed out. But that's just, well, you decided to go into teaching. That's part of the job, but it really isn't part of the job. And you can have fun and love teaching and not be stressed out every day. I get hundreds of emails a week from teachers that are really, really struggling. And so, yeah, I definitely, I hear you. If you're unprepared, if you don't have a good background in classroom management, or if you've read 10 books on classroom management, but didn't realize that a lot of them come from completely different philosophies, and you end up kind of working against yourself and don't really realize it. Yeah, it can be a real struggle, especially those little ones, those kindergartner, first graders can be a great challenge.
So will you just kind of walk me through, like, what does an ideal day kind of look like as a specialist teacher, as for our audience, music teachers? What does the ideal look like?
Well, the ideal is that every class that comes to you or you go to them knows exactly what's expected of them, and that you have the freedom to teach. You have the freedom to enjoy teaching and to inspire your students. And you have the freedom to make connections through them, through the fun you have with them and the interesting lessons that you have, and which in turn makes them enjoy being part of your class. And that's a huge part of my philosophy. One of the core tenets is that your students have to love being there. That's what gives you the leverage to have a well-behaved class. And so, yeah, an ideal classroom would be that they know what's expected and they look forward to it, look forward to you coming, and you do your thing, and that's it. Every day is just kind of, let's have a good time and let's inspire our students.
So I love that vision. But my question is, as a music teacher, obviously I am there to play with the kids and to get them to have a good time. But too often I feel like that erupts into chaos. How do I balance the times that we have fun with keeping them in control?
Well, it all starts from the beginning. So first day of school and first week of school, or the first several times that you see your students, if you're only seeing them once a week. It's about, I mentioned before, laying everything out beforehand. I think I mentioned that. It kind of goes with what the expectations are. So you're laying out exactly what the class will look like. So what's expected of each one of those students while they're in your class. And so before you do any actual teaching, or before you get into a routine and just kind of jump in and start teaching music, they need to know what the class looks like, what they're expected to do from the moment they arrive or you arrive until the class is over.
Well, I love in your books how you talk about having a classroom management plan and how that kind of does the heavy lifting for you so that you can, remain really pleasant and build that rapport with your students. So what does a classroom management plan kind of look like, and how do we develop one if we never have before?
So the point of a classroom management plan is to protect each student's right to learn without interference. And that's our goal. And so what we do is we design a list of rules that protect that right for them to learn and the freedom for you to teach. And so you'd want to look at, depending on where you're working or the experience that you're having, where you're teaching, you'd want to look at what are those behaviors that are interfering with that right to learn and with your freedom to teach.
So the classroom management plan is really just rules and their consequences.
Yes, correct. The first step is to come up with a set of rules that will protect that.
Do you advocate for like really specific rules, like no chewing gum or, no touching your neighbor when you're not supposed to? Or do you do you find that rules that are more generalized work?
Well, they need to be enforceable and they need to be easily defined. And so work hard, for example, is kind of a tough one, and same with have fun. I think those are good sentiments, and we should discuss those, and they can be expectations, but I wouldn't make them part of your rules. And so you would want rules like that are specific yet cover as much ground as possible. Listen and follow directions is very specific yet covers a great deal. That's a rule that's also easy to define, and that's the kind of the second part is after you come up with a set of rules that you need to define what those mean for your students. So you'll model exactly those misbehaviors that you see and that how they break your rules. So you'll model the misbehaviors. You'll have them practice even those misbehaviors. You'll model what following them looks like, and you'll practice as a class what following them looks like. You'll go through the steps a misbehaving student would take, and this is where we kind of get into our consequences. But when I said lay everything out in front or in the beginning, you're really walking through students through exactly what will happen when they misbehave, what rule was broken, and so there's no question as to whether they broke a rule or not.
How do we come back after we have lost our temper? Or we say that we're going to offer these consequences, but then one time we're so busy and caught up in it that we don't. And so we've broken our promise. How can we rebuild that rapport and come back from that?
Well, here's the thing. Most teachers don't make that promise. So when you do, you're really putting yourself on the line. And it puts a soft pressure on you to make sure that you do it. It also begins to create in you a new idea of who you are as a teacher, the kind of teacher that you want to be. And so you make a promise to them, but you're also at the same time making a promise to yourself that I'm going to follow through on these. And when you make a promise to 30 students, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. And so you have that going in with you all the time. And it's amazing how effective that is for you to keep your cool. But to answer your question, if you do have a bad day, you do raise your voice, the only thing you can do, really two things. If you've said things that you regret, if you've said things that are mean to the students, if you are sarcastic, if you dressed students down, then I think it's perfectly expected to apologize for that, a quick apology. I really do. And I think it's healthy for the teacher as well. If you merely fail to follow through, or you maybe raised your voice, then the best thing you can do is just recommit the next day. Just say to yourself, I'm not going to do that again. If you say too much about it, you can create more kind of antagonism between that relationship between students and teacher.
Right.
So you'd want to just quickly said some things I shouldn't have, and I apologize. Mm-hmm. And you commit yourself to, I'm never going to let that happen again.
I love that. Thanks. That makes me feel a lot better. I mean, I rarely lose my cool. But when I do, man, I feel bad.
Yeah, we want to go on and on about it, and it's just best not to. I think a simple apology and then quickly move on. And kids forget,
Right.
and they're so forgiving.
So, speaking about
They really
moving
are.
on, one of the biggest questions that we field as music teachers is how do we transition from one activity to the other? And I know that in your experience as a longtime PE teacher, you have a similar thing. The classroom's noisy. How do we get their attention? And then how do we get them to quickly move on to the next activity so that we can be really efficient with the little time that we have with them?
So we teach them how to stop and listen, and we teach them exactly what a transition looks like and what's expected of them and how it works. And then we practice just like anything else, just like when we were talking about the classroom management plan, we practice what it looks like, what's expected of them. And we have them prove to us that they understand before we put it into play. And then the very first time we do it for real, we stand back and observe from a distance, like a clinician. And if anything is amiss, we stop them back up to the previous transition or to before things went awry. And you reteach it again and you have them do it again. And one of the keys to effective classroom management is to never move on unless you're getting exactly what you want from your students. And the second you let that go, that's going to bleed into the next activity and the next transition. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. But if we stop and redo it, it'll get better and better and better. Mm-hmm. The beauty of having a classroom management plan that you lean on exclusively, and the beauty of never breaking your promise. But once you make that promise and the kids are comfortable, and by the way, they relax and feel safe, and it's comforting for them to know exactly what's expected. So they know all the time whether they're succeeding or not, whether they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or not. There's never any doubts. And that's a really wonderful feeling. And so that's part of building rapport. So those rules and consequences that we think of being so negative are actually a part of creating that classroom that kids love being part of, that safe haven that they come and enjoy. I mean, their classroom may be chaos. Their regular homeroom classroom may be chaos. And as soon as they arrive at your door, they completely change. You can see them start breathing easier. You can see them relax. And you can see an excitable class all of a sudden become calm as soon as they see you. I used to kind of wave, as much as possible, wave the homeroom teacher away. You kind of say, yeah, okay, I got him. See you. To the point where we got to where the teacher would send them from sometimes, a couple hundred feet away. I'd sort of wait and I'd wave and they'd send the kids across the playground. And because when they were with their teacher, they would continue to be excitable and kind of crazy.
Right.
And as soon as they transitioned from the teacher to a place that made sense, then they became calm.
And I totally agree. I feel like those students who may be your most challenging students to rein in, they want to be reined in. They want to have those, written out consequences and to have those enforced, because you're right, it does make them feel safer, which is awesome.
Yeah, when we hear about what we've got, or when teachers, when they talk about difficult students or really challenging students, they're focused on, and they're told to focus on unique behavior contracts and things special to that student or specific to that student. What are we going to do about this student? And there's an over fixation on this difficult student, when the very best thing you can do is to not focus on that student, but focus on being a great teacher to the entire class. Focus on having expert classroom management with the entire group. And those more difficult students, they may be the last of the 30 to kind of join in. I like to think of it as who's part of my team, who's buying in. And it may take a few days for them to buy in, but what happens is they see everyone else behaving around them, everyone else having a good time around them, and that all of their misbehavior is met with a response that takes them away from a classroom that they love being part of, or they're learning to love being part of, and they sort of shrug their shoulders and they join in. So for the most part, difficult students, the best way to handle them is to treat them like everyone else, as long as the way you're treating everyone else is kind of just the things that we described.
So let's backtrack a little bit. I was saying how, I follow your advice from your books about waiting outside the classroom. So can you kind of walk me through a typical, really solid daily routine for how we can set ourselves up for a super successful day?
Yeah, well, that's number one, absolutely, is to greet your students outside your classroom door in a routine. Everything should be a routine. So when they walk up, they should know exactly what that looks like. And for me, like I said before, I allow lots of freedom and lots of time to socialize, along with very specific, strict routines. You can call them strict in that they are that the expectation is the expectation, and there's there'll be no change in that expectation. But yeah, so they walk up and they know how to get in line, and I may allow them 60 seconds to talk to each other, or I may not, depending on the class or the grade level. And then I'll have a quick, can I have your attention? And so they look silently and wait. And how do you get them to do that? Well, you practice. You practice what that means. What can I have your attention sounds like, and what it looks like, and what they're to do when that happens, and what will happen if they don't give you your attention. So that's all into we were talking about rules and defining exactly how to follow them. And I think it's really important to give a preview at that point. So you have their attention and you give a preview and you sell your lesson, or you sell them on what's going to take place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And even if it's something that's not terribly interesting, you make it interesting. So you say, you're not going to believe what you're going to learn today. I'm going to show you something that you've never seen before, or you're going to be able to do something when you leave here you're not going to believe. You're going to be able to, you're going to play it. You're going to learn how to play an instrument, that whatever.
Right. You're going to learn about silence. But when it's important in music, though,
Sure. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's always something, and that's going to be the focus of the day. And then it also, again, it puts a little soft pressure on me to deliver that. And there's always, like I said, there's always something. And so I'm going to find that thing, and I'm going to make it exciting or scary or fun or crazy or weird or anything. And I'm going to sell that before they get in. So they're excited about it. They're looking forward to it. They have some motivation. And again, they want to please you then. They want to pay you back. The reciprocity is so, so powerful. And so if I treat those students with respect, and I give them great lessons, and I do what I say I'm going to do, I protect their right to learn and have fun in class, so they don't have anyone bullying them or bothering them or interrupting the class. And by the way, kids love that. They love that you have rules and consequences. They love that that they're not in a classroom of chaos. And you'll have student after student thanking you and hugging you. And it's amazing how you can have a class that's kind of out of control, even though you've done nothing but just given and given and given, give. And they're out of control and they're disrespectful to you. But as soon as you bring in the rules and consequences and you protect them, as soon as you create a safe haven, they love you for it. And it all sort of works together and gets stronger. So the combination between having those rules and consequences that are non-negotiable, they know about, ahead of time. You combine that with great lessons and some freedom. I say, get up and go say hi to your friends. Just get up and say hello. And you combine that together, and that's the magic. And that's what's, it doesn't matter where you teach or who you are. If you have that combination, you're going to love your job, and those kids are going to love being there.
So in your Happy Teacher Habits book, my favorite one was envision, because, I'm a big fan of visualization to begin with. But talk to me about how we can, what should we be visualizing before we get started with our school day?
Well, a couple things. I like to visualize just when we were talking about that, what great thing that the one thing that you find in your lesson plans that you want to focus on that day. So I may visualize that one thing. And so I may visualize just how that period will go. So if you're teaching that same thing each period or different periods, you may visualize sort of what that looks like. And as you're doing that, all sorts of connections will come into your head. And so you may visualize stories. And I'm a big proponent of storytelling. I think it's so powerful. And I wrote in my first book that there is nothing I've ever done that's had a greater effect on students than telling stories. And so I may visualize just a kind of outline of a story that I might tell. And it might be a story introducing something. So a lot of my one things are, I'm going to tell you a story that you're not going to believe, or I'm going to tell you a story that you're going to have trouble sleeping tonight. I've got to warn you, it's really, really scary. And so, so we can visualize our one thing. We can visualize stories, but we can also visualize our response to those misbehaviors, maybe to those, how we're going to respond to those challenging students. And you can take it as far as actually, closing your classroom door in the morning and actually getting up and practicing how you're going to respond when a student calls out. And I like to kind of finish off that little visualization. And by the way, you don't need a lot of time. You'll find that you can visualize very, very quickly. Sometimes I'll stand, for 60 seconds just inside the door as the kids are walking toward, down the hallway. I may do a quick kind of visualization there. But you finish it with making a promise to yourself that no matter what happens, if a herd of buffalo come crashing through your room, no matter what happens, you visualize the worst possible thing that happens, you're going to keep your cool inside and out. So you're not going to let kind of stress get to you. And it's amazing how effective that is. Those visualizations are. I know we just touched on them briefly, but just spend a couple minutes every day And again, you can do it before each period or first thing in the morning.
So let's talk about classroom rewards, because I know in my school, some of the classrooms have like clip up charts, right? And so if the kids are good, they get to clip up. And so they might come into my class and be like, really watch me, Miss Jones, so that I can be good. And you can tell the teacher that I can clip up. And to which I'm like, well, you should be good anyway, right? It should be like this intrinsic motivation.
I feel like that I want to create, and through my books and website, I want to create in every article I've written, every chapter is all pointing toward or dedicated to making your classroom an intrinsic motivational producing machine, So we want to really rev those internal motivational engines up in our students. And so when we give them a reward in exchange for good behavior, what we're doing is we're telling them that behavior is work that they deserve to be paid for, that they deserve to be paid.
Right.
And it very, very effectively snuffs out intrinsic motivation. So it works against what you're trying to do.
So what are ways that we can, recognize kids who are doing exceptionally well? Like right now, my students are trying to learn all of the words for their Veterans Day performance. And yesterday in class, I had 3 kids who were just doing outstanding, like way over the top of what the rest of the class was. And I wanted to give them some kind of kudos or reward. I ended up just giving them air high fives, and saying, hey, you guys are doing a great job, Am I doing a bad thing by recognizing them, or?
No, not at all. Because praise is sort of a different topic, and so we praise students when they have done something they haven't done before. So they've improved to a degree that they haven't done before. They've shown real improvement, not just momentary improvement. And so I believe strongly in praise. Initial learning, they're learning something for the first time. I mean, I praise the crud out of them. I love it, and I think it's wonderful. Sometimes the best praise is the private, subtle, quiet praise, which I'm an advocate of. It's a lot of times it means a lot more than kind of the over the top, which can feel and seem fake. So
what does that look like?
Well, for an individual student, sometimes it's a note folded over on their desk. Sometimes it's a head nod from across the room. Sometimes it's a fist bump. Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's a, I knew you could do it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a, I love that sentence. But it's the external rewards. It's the do this and you'll get that rewards. It's the token economies, which I think are terrible for kids. And they turn your classroom into just a cold-hearted exchange. And the research backs me up on this, that though those kind of rewards can get a student to do something in a moment. And that's why they work. So I can get a student to do this in that particular moment, but it weakens his or her intrinsic motivation going forward. And also those rewards weaken over time.
Right.
And it essentially weakens what you're trying to do. You want them to love school. And so your classroom needs to be the ultimate reward. So just coming to your classroom is the reward. Learning music is the reward. I mean, music especially is intrinsically enjoyable, but even if we're teaching math, if I'm teaching math, I'm going to make that. That's going to be my passion. I'm going to make sure that they see math is wonderful and exciting and interesting. But if we if we tell them do these problems and you'll get this, or if we tell them, learn this song and get this, we're removing that. We're taking away the joy of learning and the joy of experiencing music and math and art and PE.
Mm-hmm.
And the effect on kids over time when you take that away is really, really powerful, and how they see you and their connection with you and their connections with each other. And, all that kind of jealousy that comes in, and then they see you less as a person and more of what they can get from you. And it also brings in a sense of entitlement.
Right.
Hey, I wrote this great essay. What do I get?
Yeah.
What do we get? So class, we're going to go outside and we're going to play, we're going to have some fun and play this or that. What do we get? If we win, what do we get?
Oh my goodness.
And so, get rid of all the prize boxes and all that stuff. Now, having said that, do that stuff anyway. Have stickers and pass them out, but do it for no reason at all.
Right.
Just because it's fun, just because you love your students. So have a dance party for no reason.
Right.
And include everyone. Give a sticker to every student. Just say, hey, I got a bunch of stickers. Here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. Because it's fun, and it just adds to the experience of being in your classroom.
Right. So what do I do when a teacher brings me their class and she says, hey, they can earn extra recess if they're really good for you, right? And so then she's putting this burden on me to decide if they get extra recess or if they don't. So any tips for how I can deal with that type of situation?
Well, you can say, no, thank you, that I've got this. And I think it's important we do that anyway. Classroom teachers have enough on their plate.
Right.
And I like to say, you know what, don't worry about your class. I've got it. I'll take care of it. And then make sure that you do. I can take care of it. You go and enjoy your prep period or whatever. So yeah, as much as you can, say no, thank you. If they insist, then you do it, but vaguely. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't affect you. It affects them. So it won't affect your relationship with the students. But it does affect those students and their relationship with their teacher. They can have a different culture altogether in their homeroom, right, in their regular classroom, and come to you and know that everything is different and behave completely different for you. And they don't miss it. Every once in a while, a student may say something like, well, do we get anything? So you just get the joy of being here.
Well, and
you just control what you can control.
I know there's been this meme passed around through music teacher social media channels that it says, I teach music, I'm not your prep period. And for some reason, I find that so outrageously offensive because I get that, I don't know. I realize I'm their prep period and I honor that. In fact, today I have to go on the day that we're recording this. I have an early class outside. It's only 10 minutes early for me to be there for my contract time, but it gives my friend who teaches fourth grade a prep period on a day when she would not normally have any break. And I'm okay with that. I traded it for a day on Friday, so I get to leave early. You know what I mean? But I have no problem with being their prep period. I like sending them away saying, you know what? I've got this. You go take a break. Go do what you need to do. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
But I don't care if they think me a PE teacher or just a prep teacher. It just doesn't make any difference to me. Get over yourself, right? It doesn't. And who cares?
It doesn't minimize or devalue you as a teacher that somebody
No,
else is seeing you as a break in their schedule.
no. And, that kind of comes with the territory that if you're a specialist teacher, that take it as a badge of honor
Yeah.
or courage. Who cares? I mean,
Well, I see it as I'm building really
it's a
goodwill
lot.
with those teachers. So
Yeah,
when I ask them for special favors, like I get it,
agreed.
And at the end of the year when like I schedule a program for one of the last days of the school year, and so then I'm like, "Hey, if you 4th grade teachers want to bring in both your classes at the same time, that means I get to see them 4 times a week instead of 2, and that means that they get twice as many breaks and they just love it."
I love that you say that because I played, and I haven't been, I was a prep time teacher. Look, see, I even said it, prep time teacher. But I was a specialist for 12 years, and now I'm teaching high school to kind of experience that. But I played fast and loose with the schedule all the time. I served those teachers. I made life easy for them, like you. And then that way I could wheel and deal all the time. I could ask for favors and they just, of course, yeah, well, anything that works for you, just because I would do the same for them. And like you, I would double up classes and, do all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for giving us all of this detailed advice. I wish I could keep you on for another hour or so, but my episode would be freakishly long. So tell us about how we can learn more from you and connect with you, and if we need one-on-one kind of counseling, you do that too. So kind of give your little spiel.
yeah, so they can find out more about me by going to smartclassroommanagement.com and sign up for emails. Every week I send an article that they can learn over the weekend and then put into practice right away on Monday. And those are free. And there are over 400 articles in the archive of every classroom management issue you could possibly imagine. And I also do personal coaching. So there's a little link on the menu bar. You can learn more about personal coaching. And I do that quite a bit via Skype.
Love it. So you can help music teachers from all over the country to really have a much better life and a happier career, which is
Absolutely.
exactly our goal.
For sure.
If you're like me, you now have a substantial list of to-dos ready to go to improve your classroom management starting Monday. And if you haven't already subscribed to Michael's emails, get over to his website, smartclassroommanagement.com, and subscribe. And be sure to check out his other published works too. They are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on our foray into classroom management. I can't wait to hear what you try and what works best for you. Remember to share your ideas and comment on this post. While you're at it, why not share this podcast with a friend? There's not a single music educator in the country who can't use at least one of the episodes we've already done, and there are likely to be many, many, many more gems in the future. Remember to get on over to Smart Music and see how they can help you streamline everything from your students' at-home practice to your performance assessments. And if you like what we're doing here on the Music Ed Mentor podcast for music educators, we'd love for you to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues and leave us lots of stars on iTunes. It really does make a difference. This episode alone could change a music educator's entire life and keep them in this career for years to come. Join me next time as I share with you my live experiences from the National Association for Music Education National Conference. I cannot wait to be there and present to all of those in attendance. If you're going to be in Dallas for the conference, be sure to come and say hi at my session on Monday at 3 o'clock, and your voice could be on this podcast next. And of course, thank you for being you and doing all that you do for those kids and nearly adults in your classroom. Smile a little bigger this week. Breathe a little deeper. Take time every day to stop and look what you're doing because you're living a unique and amazing life. Until next time, keep teaching on.